Without further ado, Danish over at GitHub.
All right, so I'm going to give a little talk about how we do things at GitHub. My name is Danish, obviously from San Francisco, and I work for GitHub. We sell stickers and t-shirts. There's companies like Valve and Gore and GitHub who have more of a flat structure. And essentially, you've probably heard us talk about how we have no managers. Well, in reality, what it really means is everybody's a manager. That creates an interesting dynamic for us because you're not necessarily having to go get something signed off for someone, right? You're kind of running your own show to an extent. One thing I noticed, at least, was that there seem to be these kind of groups that are being created within these larger companies that have a traditional hierarchy structure, and they kind of call them labs or research groups, and the way they kind of spin it is that they're like the new hip group within the company that you can go work for because they do things a little differently. And what I've noticed is that these companies have realized that having a culture that isn't necessarily a hierarchy is going to allow innovations and certain things to kind of be brought into these other teams that they have, right? And they're hoping that it changes the way things are being done because they've realized that, when you work for a large company like Intel, being able to do new cool things is going to take a lot longer when you're in a traditional hierarchy. For us at GitHub, the way we approach all the problems that we face, we call them first principles. And the idea is that rather than approaching a problem by seeing what Apple is doing or what Google is doing or what these other companies are doing, we want to kind of step back and figure out what the root of the problem is. One of the biggest issues that we have for our company is that everybody can work from wherever they want. We actually have about 60% of the company remote. This is a snapshot that I took of one of our internal apps of where all the hubbers are. As you can see, there's a ton of people in the US, and that's actually only because next week we have our company-wide summit, so everybody is slowly migrating to San Francisco, so all those dots will be in one place sooner or later. But there'll be a lot of dots, but most of us are remote, so that creates a lot of interesting problems for us, right? People are in different time zones, people like to communicate in certain ways. We've kind of stepped back and figured out, okay, how are we going to handle these problems? Obviously, we could just go look at how other companies are doing it. And if I ever did leave this company to go somewhere else, which I probably will do for a pretty long time, I would definitely like that company to have an internal tools team that is basically dedicated to making stuff for the company, for the teams that are working there, because what I've realized is that this allows us to approach the problem from the view that makes sense for us. Obviously, those things are very time-consuming, but the fact is sometimes it's better to step back and realize that spending time to do that is going to benefit the team and the company in the long run. So another thing that's really important, especially being a very distributed team, is that we want to obviously keep communication, right? That's why we created that team app. That's why we do a lot of things. And one of the things that we have in our company is that every Friday we have what we call Beer 30. And essentially, it's a meeting for the founders to come and talk to us about either a GitHub philosophy or things that are being done, things that we're going to ship, and just kind of get everybody on the same page about what the vision at GitHub is. Another philosophy that we have is you can work from wherever and whenever you want. So obviously that adds even more to the problem of kind of not always synchronously interacting with your coworkers, right? The things that we implement for this is essentially, we want people to live an asynchronous lifestyle while they're at GitHub. We want to make it so that people can ping you, but you can answer them when you have time to answer them. So one of the things we have in GitHub.com actually is what we call mentions. So it's basically just like Twitter, right? You do @ and you can mention the username, and we also have the ability to mention teams. So this is really useful because if you want a designer to look at something that you push, because you're a developer and you have really bad design skills and you want them to kind of look it over, but you don't necessarily want to ping just one of the designers, you just want someone to look it over. You ping the team, and then whoever is available from that team will be able to go read that issue, look at your pull request, and be able to give you some input and maybe help you out a little bit. I want to encourage them to work on the things that they care about and the things that matter to them, because at the end of the day, they're going to enjoy doing that rather than working on something that they've either become jaded in or that they're losing interest in.
So that's a cat, right?
That is an OctoCat.
Well, thank you guys for coming, and thank you guys for...
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.